Well, son, we actually did used to live there until your mother ate us out of house and home.
The question today is actually three related questions. Should we have joint or separate bank accounts? Who should handle the finances? And do we need to talk about every purchase? These loaded questions come from Brad and Mary in Summerville, South Carolina. An interesting thing about Summerville is it claims to be the birthplace of sweet tea. However, some people in Virginia would dispute this claim.
Well, that's a sweet thought. Now, I'm not really sure who invented sweet tea, but I do know this. Adding sugar to already prepared iced tea and real sweet tea are two really very different things. If you're not adding sugar to the tea when it's hot and it's brewing, well, it's just simply not sweet tea. Tasting them side by side, well, there's just no comparison. For me, I just have never been a fan of sucking up sugar granules with my tea. But to each their own. I'll let you decide how you want to drink your tea, if at all. You know, we went to war over tea one time, a long time. No, we didn't. I know they're thinking this. No, we did not live through that time in history. We might be seasoned and we might be older, but we are not that old.
Not that old.
Okay, back to the question about handling money. Did you know, along with fighting over kids and sex, money is one of the biggest tensions and argument producers in a marriage?
Yes, it is. Back in the ancient old days, before the internet, there used to be advice columns in newspapers where the two biggest ones were Dear Abby and Ann Landers. There were actually twin sisters who had competing columns in publications throughout the country. I read in one of them years ago where a reader had sent in a question that went something like this. My boyfriend and I have been living together for 6 years. We have 3 children together, and now he wants to have a joint bank account. Can I really trust him with my money?
Wow.
Now, I find it funny that this person valued their money over everything else in their life. Sadly, that is what a lot of people do. Now, I'm not saying that we should be frivolous with our money. We should be diligent and dedicated to being good money managers of our money. But when it comes to a couple and their money, I believe unless there are extenuating circumstances, that we should have joint accounts and merge that part of our life also.
You know, just a little something about us. When Greg and I were first married, we had a joint account, but I also kept a separate individual account for myself. The reason is that in my first marriage, I had really trusted my husband to handle all the finances, all the money. And sadly, when we got divorced, I discovered that maybe some of that trust was misplaced because I'd not kept up with what was happening with the money and found myself in much more debt than I thought I was in. But Greg, who is so patient and kind with me when I sometimes react out of past traumas, and I do, he understood that I had to learn to trust him with the money. And I am so thankful that you did not take offense to that need that I had. So thank you for that. It was only a short period of time before I really realized I could trust him. Because I hate handling money, he handles that. And I closed out my account and we just had the joint account. Since that time, we've always had a joint bank account.
That's right. Debster has access to every penny we have in all of our personal and business accounts. And if she wanted to, she could drain all of our bank accounts out tonight. But I know she won't because she's a wise woman. And that would be foolish to take all the money out of the accounts. By the way, Debster, with the inflation we're experiencing now and everything seems to cost more, did you know there's still a music concert that just costs 45 cents?
I had no idea.
It's 50 Cent featuring Nickelback.
Some of you might not even know who those people are.
Possible.
But you have the internet, so you can look it up.
Yes.
So, a question for you. Do you feel that maybe your inability to share finances could be rooted in a lack of trust? Does your spouse not respect money in the same way that you do? It's really so true. We see it so often working with couples in our pre-marriage and coaching teaching. One is a spender and one is a saver. We see that often. That's because opposites attract, right?
Yes.
And now it's advised, and it is a good practice to save for emergencies, for large purchases, and even for the future. But if you only save and you don't spend some over time, the work that you've put into it may become drudgery. And because you're not finding any enjoyment from your efforts. But you know, the counter to that is if you only spend, after a time, you're going to find that you will not be able to enjoy other things in life that come from that practice, the practice of saving and good money management. So the best money management is a mix of the two. As listeners to our channel, if you've received any value so far, please like and subscribe. But also, if you have a question you'd like us to answer, reply in the comments. And please add your first names and where you live.
You know, in the Bible it says that it is foolish to start a big project without counting the cost. Now, we're not financial advisors, but there's a myriad of good information available in books, on courses, and of course, through the YouTube channels. One of our favorite sources, which we recommend often, is Dave Ramsey. Just a few of the things that you can learn from him are to be open about all the financial aspects of your life together. We need to make sure that you don't have financial infidelity, which occurs when one or both of you are lacking transparency, which may push you to cover up expenditures, how much and how to spend, or may be dishonest about how much you make or debt you have or have had. Also, having 6 months worth of income saved for emergencies, because you never know what's going to come up in life, right? Has anyone ever heard of COVID? I mean, how many people were affected by that and could have really used to have a little money set aside?
And some people are still feeling the effects of that.
Absolutely. Also, you learn about the wisdom and value of living beneath your means. And living on 90% of your income, in our opinion, it's best to give to some projects or some people outside of yourself, because when you give to others, it's good for your soul. And when you take a course together, and we recommend that you do, you can pick and choose which elements of that course you want to follow. Some people may follow everything in the course, and some people may only choose to do certain aspects of it, kind of like a buffet line.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But of course, we believe that the most important part is that you come to an agreement on exactly how you're going to work on handling money together, because it's something that you need to do together, not just by yourself.
That's correct. You know, also, we recommend you take time to meet on a regular basis to discuss your joint money goals, to discuss your budget, and the big purchases you may have in mind for the future. And then early on in our marriage, one thing that I'll mention here is that we didn't have a whole lot of money.
We did not.
In fact, it was worse than that. We had a very little money and a whole lot of debt.
Yes.
So we would discuss any purchase that was more than $25. And Greg was so great, because when I would say, I think I'm going to spend some money this week, and he'd say, about how much you think you're going to spend, and I would share with him how much I thought that would be, and he lovingly just said, you know, next week might be a better week for that. He didn't say, you can't spend any money, we don't have any. He just lovingly told me that. He gave me a hint, hey, next week would be better for that, so just plan ahead. Over time, that amount that we talked about grew because our financial situation improved. But we always discussed the major purchases. I had a friend of mine whose husband actually went out and bought her a car, which sounds great.
It does.
It sounds wonderful, except he didn't bother to ask her what kind she wanted,
Wow.
what color she wanted, and he didn't bother to tell her, I'm going to spend lots of money on an automobile. Anytime we purchase vehicles or homes, we always decide before we begin to look how much we can afford,
Yes.
and how we can remain beneath our means. And we do that so we don't put unnecessary stress on ourselves. You know, in my first marriage, we were very young when we got married, and in my first marriage, we were budgeting, and we had just gone over some expenditures, and I realized that every month we had a little money left over, which is a good thing. But it wasn't much, and we were walking through the mall, and there was a piano store there, and they had a big sale going on. They said, you can have this piano for only $10 a month.
Wow.
And I looked at my first husband, and I said, we have just about $10 extra a month. We could do this. Yeah, not so smart, okay? You remember, I said earlier, we've said before, money, sex, and kids are the major sources of arguments with couples.
Yes. You know, one thing you don't want to do is put the burden of living on that bottom dollar every month, because that is stressful.
It is
that
very
causes
stressful.
a lot of stress.
Very stressful.
And finally, I believe that the husband should primarily take care of the bill paying and being responsible for the finances. Now, wait a second.
Yeah.
This is not a macho or misogynistic statement, because I believe that you both should, and that's something that Debbie and I do, is we discuss our finances, and so that we know both what's happening and how everything is going. But I want to be the protector of my wife. And I believe husbands should be the protector of their wives. Because if there's, thankfully it's not now, but there were times that, hey, maybe the utility bill couldn't be paid on time, or there was some other, maybe the car payment was going to be a little late. And if somebody had to make that phone call, it should be me. I didn't want Debbie to have that stress upon her. And so I wanted to protect her from that. And so I took that on for myself. Also going all the way back to the Garden of Eden, man tends towards abdicating his responsibility, and women tend towards wanting to overextend their control. Let me explain. Adam and Eve were in the garden together, and they were told not to eat of just one tree. That's it. One tree. Don't eat from that one. Everything else is fair game. But the serpent told some lies, and Eve decided to eat the fruit. Now, Adam was standing right there beside her. He abdicated his responsibility and obligation to protect her when he did not stop her from eating. And then when she ate, she exerted control of the situation. Adam had a new decision to make.
Yeah.
He could trust God to provide him with another helpmeet, or he could eat the fruit just like she did. He looked at his beautiful wife and wasn't sure if God would provide him with another fine-looking wife. After all, she was the most beautiful woman in the world.
That's absolutely true.
And decided that she was more important than God. That began a trend that continues throughout the whole of eternity.
That's absolutely true. That reminds me of a joke. Adam and one of his sons were walking through the early part of the world near the garden. And one day, after a long day of work, one of his sons looks over there and says, "Hey, Dad, why don't we live there? It's absolutely beautiful." And Adam looked at his son and he said, "Well, son, we actually did used to live there until your mother ate us out of house and home."
Boing. Wow. Woo. We could probably spend a lot more time on this subject of money, but we won't. Today, at least. This is Debster and Greg on Marriage. We love y'all. We want the best for you and your marriage, because when you have a better marriage,
your kids will have a better life.
Here's some more videos to answer your questions.